Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast. The podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it, and also with food, and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman. And in this week's episode, I'm talking with Dr. Mark Sherwood, who grew up as a typical kid in the United States with all the junk foods and who was very athletic during his youth. And then later on in life, he chose to become a doctor. We talk about all kinds of things in this episode, including the challenge of change and aging gracefully without sugar. We'll get to our chat in just a minute. But first, I just wanted to tell you that if you're looking for some free resources, then I have plenty for you. First, download my 5 tips to get rid of cravings. And those 5 tips may not be what you think they are. So go to aftersugarclub.com and download your 5 tips today. And while you're at aftersugarclub.com, why not take the cravings quiz? I created this cravings quiz specifically to help you start thinking more deeply about what triggers your cravings. And when you do this quiz, you'll get your personalized score as well as my practical tips to help you take your first step to get rid of cravings. Those free resources are at aftersugarclub.com. And also, come check out the Life After Sugar Facebook page and subscribe to the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, as well as my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar, which is where you'll get all kinds of inspiration, so that you can see that it's perfectly possible to live a happy and active life, even if you don't eat sugar. You can also check out my TikTok account at Netta_lifeaftersugar. Okay, let's get to my chat with Mark. Okay, so I'm here today with Mark. And Mark, can you tell us a little bit first about your background growing up in the United States, your background with food and specifically with sugar?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I was an adopted kid, so I was kind of spoiled, as we like to say here in the U.S. And I didn't grow up healthy at all. I grew up just eating kind of what I want, eating the so-called standard American diet that everybody's familiar with, and it didn't do me very well. I mean, even though I was a good athlete, I still didn't have or reach the potential that I should have or could have. Now that I look back on it, because I had really poor nutrition, and really, I think that I look back at my life, and that's one regret that I couldn't change, but I would like to go back and be able to change that and have the knowledge then that I have now. And so I was still able to progress and become quite successful in athletics, eventually becoming a professional baseball player. And then I was later on a police department, believe it or not, for a couple decades. And then I transitioned into the world of doctor of naturopathy, or naturopathic doctor. And that's what I do now. And I've done that for the last 15 years.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. And so can you give us an example or just, describe what sorts of foods you did grow up on as a kid?
Oh, my goodness. Pizza, cookies, donuts, soda, cakes. Really, I look back on it and there was really nothing good at all. I mean, it's amazing I'm even here today talking to you. It was that bad. And I didn't understand at the time, but I do now. That stuff is addicting. It's addicting just like cocaine, because I know now it hits those reward centers of the brain. And so it's not unusual, and it's not unfathomable for me to see children today that are in the same patterns of eating behaviors and not being able to get out, and much like adults. And the sad thing about it is we didn't have a lot of money at all. My
Mhm.
mom and dad did the best they could. My dad was the breadwinner or the worker, and my mom stayed at home to raise me. And we didn't grow up really well to do, so we would buy the things that we thought tasted good and were the
Yeah.
cheapest. And most people think like that, but how did I, know it was very non-nutritious?
Yeah. No, I mean it's nobody's fault, is it?
No, no,
We don't know what we don't know, and we can't teach what we don't know.
that's right.
And our parents in general, they do the very best with what they have.
They do, and I think my parents did a really good job as far as trying hard. But right there is a place where ignorance is truth. And they just didn't know any better. And I think it was because, at least in this country, we saw a shift in probably the time I was growing up with the food pyramid, and at that point in time, we heard that fat was bad and you want to avoid that. And nobody talked about sugar, so we ate all these fat-free pastries. And it
Hmm.
was just all the time. And because we thought if I don't eat fat, I'm eating good. But what we didn't factor in was the amount of sugar in that. And, thankfully today I'm not diabetic or anything like that. But certainly there's a lot of that happening right now. And I suppose at the time, Netta, I believe that um, probably I'm not diabetic because we were outside and probably more active
Yeah.
than young people are today.
Yeah,
And that
probably.
probably saved me a lot.
Yeah, and you're probably sort of what, just genetically not as sensitive to diabetes
Right.
as some other people, I would imagine, you know. Life's unfair like that.
It is, and we've done, since I've been in my current career, we do a lot of genetic testing, and I'll tell you that there is a good portion, and I think it's more than 50% from what I've seen, and we've done thousands of people that have a high tendency or susceptibility to having blood sugar issues with genetics that align that way. But you put them in a world then with where it's obesogenic or diabesogenic, like I say, they're going to gain weight. They're going to have blood sugar issues because that's the majority of them. Now, it's not the gene's fault. It's just kind of like the environment's fault, really.
Yes, yes. I mean, I suppose it's easy enough to say, well, it's my genes and there's nothing I
Yeah,
can do about it. But there is a lot we can do about it.
there is a lot we can do about it. I think in quite today it's interesting because I had this conversation just today at the office about that with a person that today's world, especially in our country, they want to blame it on the genes. And it's an easy excuse, like, well, you just got a bad set of bad genes in that. I'm sorry about that. But ultimately, that's not it.
Mm,
Because if that were the case, if the genes have only changed 2% in 10,000 years, which is true,
yeah.
then why didn't people have the type 2 diabetes trend 200 years ago? So again, that blows that out of the water, I think. And hopefully people can begin to take ownership of their health once again, which is what I think we should do.
Yes, yes, and you know, you're in a touchy sort of situation where taking ownership, what I call your personal power, and blame is it, you know, it's a very fine line between people understanding that they have this power to change things and feeling like they're being blamed for whatever,
Yeah.
you know, their health issues, of which diabetes.
That's a very good statement because I see people, and you were having that conversation with people. You got to be very delicate with them. You got to almost say, now look, I know that your genes, the way you're made, makes you have less resilience than somebody else. And because you have less resilience than somebody else, that's not your fault. You were born that way, but that means you have less leeway and you might show foundational cracks quicker than somebody else. But
Hmm.
ultimately, you don't want to go there. So you can take charge right now and make sure that you walk this pathway and that's not a concern for you. And that's kind of the way I take it with them.
Yeah. And the fact that it comes from you as a naturopathic doctor, does that help the message to sort of flow more smoothly?
I think so because fortunately or unfortunately, I deal with a lot of people from around the country and world. And it's stuck in family lines. You get this whole kind of idea of indoctrination of what they think is true, and then they find out it's not. But then you have to work them one at a time. And coming from me, I suppose it helps a little bit because they can say, well, Dr. Mark said that versus Aunt Mary said this, And so it's the same message and I'm okay with that, I guess. I don't care how it gets across as long as it's truthful and it brings positive change and brings hope into somebody else's life.
Yeah, totally. I've talked on this podcast before about the concept of cognitive dissonance, where,
Mhm.
it's like when you're presented with a truth or a fact that you are not quite sort of ready to
Yeah,
believe, then, you'll find fault in the fact rather than in how you sort of assimilate new information. Do you find that in your practice that happens a lot?
I do. And it used to happen more. And I think probably, to be very transparent, it was probably my wife and I's fault a lot of times because, like, when you're trying to be sensitive and delicate in issues like that, self-admittedly on our side, you don't want to bring a situation of hurting someone's feelings or making it seem like it's their fault. But then we finally, probably 5 years ago, and we've done this a long time, we finally transitioned into this idea is that my responsibility is to communicate with love, respect, and truth, accurate information. And if that hurts their feelings, that's not my fault. As long as I communicate it with the right spirit and the right heart and the right, you know, motive, I can't worry about that. So I'm going to go ahead and share truth, as fast and furious as I can. And it still bothers me when they don't get it.
Yeah.
But when we shifted like that, Netta, it really did help people.
Yeah.
Some would get a little bit, like, wow, a little bit maybe potentially offended.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think they realized it was in love. And I think it really helped them.
Yeah.
And so we saw a really good shift in that. So we don't see that cognitive dissonance appearance as much as we did
Yeah.
before.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. And whenever you're dealing with other humans, yourself as a doctor, myself as a teacher,
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's a normal human reaction to,
Yeah,
because I did it myself, to like first say no before you say yes.
that's right. That's right. And it's like, we have to deal with the ideas, physician or teacher alike. And I was telling you before you went live, that I view proper physicians being teachers. I think that's really should happen, in my opinion.
Hmm.
But ultimately, a teacher is responsible for being truthful and getting the best out of your students,
Yeah.
and that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And we want them all to make A's or top grades or whatever it be in their health.
Hmm.
But all of them don't. Does
Yeah.
that mean I did a bad job? No. It means that I'm always evaluating how I can do a better job and reach more people.
Yeah. Love it. Yes, absolutely. And I always say that learning or change happens just outside of your comfort zone.
That is a very good word. I'm going to use that one sometime because it's like when, change is imminent.
Yeah.
Life is like that. You're going to change, man. And life is changing. The world's changing. We have to change with it or we're going to get left behind. But ultimately, to make a change for the better in your health or whatever, you're going to have to walk through the big old door that's got fear standing by it. And that big fear is going to look at you and say, you can't do it, but you can't do it.
Mm.
You're not smart enough. You're not strong enough. You don't have enough self-control. You don't have enough patience to do this. You're just not good enough.
Mm.
And you got to turn off that noise and you got to walk through the door.
Yep.
At that place where your greatest change occurs, that's the place where your greatest resistance is going to be as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that was my experience as well
Mhm.
as someone who changed my diet, but also as a teacher, that we're in contact with resistance, as part of the learning process. So
Yep.
for yourself, with your practice, uh, what's the biggest challenge you find for people who know intellectually that they have to change their diet, but they're like, I don't think I can do it. It's too hard.
Yeah, I think that is it right there. And I'll expound on that a little bit because what happens is the majority of people in the world well, let's just say North America, where we are, right? Um, they are not going to be supportive of that because it is the minority now that is the healthy sort. It's the majority now that's the sick sort.
Hmm.
You look at the obesity rates, the diabetes trends, combining those two words. You look at the autoimmune conditions, the heart disease, the cancers. These things are all growing exponentially. And I believe right now that North Americans are in the most unhealthy place they've ever been in the history of the world right now. And that's not okay. So the greatest thing people have, and I get it, man. Let's say here's a person. I'll just use your name as an example. Here's Netta, who's married to John, who has three kids, James, Noah, and Joseph. You know, and you go there and you say, we're going to make some changes in our diet. And husband's going to say, are you crazy?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on? And so there's not a lot of support there. And then people don't get a lot of community like that. So what we've tried to do is try to have events on a regular basis to get them together with like-minded people. We've tried to, get them equipped with good podcasts and good videos to listen to. Um, Good television. We've done TV for a long time to get them to listen to that and continue to kind of be a voice of reason in their ear, a voice of hope, I would say. And
Yeah.
they can sometimes break free from that. And then eventually, I tell them all the time, don't expect to be accepted by everybody. It's going to put you in some real weird situations where you're going to be at a dinner sometime and somebody's going to say to you something like this, man, I bet you're miserable having to eat that. And then you might get somebody to whisper in the group of 10 in your ear, I admire you for that.
Mm-hmm.
How can you tell me how you do that? So it's just going to be one once in a while you change, but the rest of them are going to be kind of either overtly or covertly against you.
Yeah, yeah, that's very well put. And I'm wondering whether for yourself you went through this process of resistance before you made the change, because as you're saying, you grew up with all the
Yeah.
processed foods.
Yeah.
How did you break out of that? I want to take a quick break to say that if this is your first time here, then welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. And whether you're new or a regular and you haven't yet rated or reviewed this podcast, could I ask you to scroll down and tap on the stars to rate this podcast and also to write a short review to let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. I love reading your reviews. And when you rate and review this podcast, not only does it encourage me to continue making new episodes, but it also helps to share this podcast and have more people see it so that we can help more people feel better and lose weight with less sugar. So again, thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast and for spreading the word about sugar.
Well, my story is a little bit different. I'd actually, when I was a professional baseball player, this is back before cell phones and computers and all this. I had to move across around the world to the country of Australia, where I lived, and I didn't know what I was doing with anything. And so I had to kind of figure that out. And I had nothing to do at all during the day. Nothing. I didn't know anybody. I would just go to practice or games whenever we had them. And there was a gym down the street. And I thought, well, I'm going to go down there and at least exercise. And so I got to know some people down there and started making changes just like that. And interestingly enough, I watched during that one season when I started making changes like that, my skill set went up, my performance went up, and I did better. And so for me, it was kind of like the proof is in the practice, and it was a change like that. But when I came back, this is interesting. I went right back in the old habits again
Huh.
because it's just environmental shift. You put yourself in in the place, and this is not the best analogy, but people will get it. If you're a drug addict or an alcoholic, you don't want to go hang out with the drug dealers or at the bar. But I
Hmm.
went right back in both,
Okay.
not drugs or alcohol, but into the food, which is highly addicting. And then when I was on a local police department, a major police department, Tulsa, Oklahoma, actually, I decided I need to go back to that. So I started trying to make the change. And I'll tell you, Netta, people made fun of me so bad,
Oh,
but I dug my heels in and I took my lunch every day.
wow.
I packed my lunch, took my lunch, and even when they would go out to eat, this sounds crazy, I would take the food that I packed with me into the restaurant and politely ask the managers if it would be okay if I could sit there and eat. And I
Wow.
never got turned down. They let me, even though I know that was probably against food code rules, but I appreciate that. So, and some of them even heated it up for me the in a plate, which was pretty nice.
Very nice. How
Yeah.
old were you around that time?
I was 25.
So you were pretty young to like do
Yeah.
your thing and not be too worried about what other people thought.
I was, and I guess probably it was kind of the only kid thing, that made me figure out I need to do it. But I just wasn't happy. I mean, to be honest with you, I wasn't happy with who I was or the way I looked or how I felt. Because
Hmm.
I knew how good I felt that back here. Then I knew how bad I felt back here, and I was able to compare the two. And and that's a unique point because most people today can't compare the two like I could compare.
Yeah.
They've only got one set of awareness, and that's in an unhealthy environment.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes we're not even aware that we're in an unhealthy
No,
environment, you know? So fast forward, what made you want to become a naturopathic doctor?
I was put in charge of a wellness program at my police department towards the end of my career. I had to develop the whole thing. There's no template. I had to learn it. And I started doing some statistics and analysis of health of police officers, not just in the United States, but also in North America, quite frankly. And I found out something fascinating that they didn't live very long. And I thought, I want to know why.
Mm.
So the more I started studying and getting into that, I realized that stress, nutrition, poor sleep, the lifestyle factors, you didn't exercise or anything like that, were just horrible. And they were always on multiple medications and things. And I wanted to figure out why. And I just started studying, and I started studying, and like that movie Forrest Gump, who
Hmm.
Forrest kept on running, I just kept on studying and never stopped. And I thought to myself, because the mission of police work is to protect and serve,
Hmm.
and I thought, I can take this to another place and protect and serve in a greater way mankind. And that was honestly what drove me that way. And I had to walk through fear in that one too, because my friends on the police department told me I was crazy and I was too old, and that's a bad idea to do that. So here I am today.
Wow. Wow. Fascinating.
Hmm.
And so how long have you been a naturopathic doctor?
13 years.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. And one of the things you were telling me before, one of your areas of interest is in longevity and aging gracefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my particular question is, what's that got to do with sugar?
Well, you look at all the different metrics or measurables we have for people that have lived a long time, the idea of staying healthy, and even the principles of how the body ages, how it builds up damage. And when you take in sugar, which is going to be a highly processed sugar, found in processed foods we're talking about here. We're not talking about natural sugar. We're talking about cellular damage. And so to think about how the body ages, we go right back to that little organelle in our cells called the mitochondria. That mitochondria that's the engine that creates ATP for all our cells, for all our body to grow. Too much sugar will prevent nutrients from getting down to the mitochondrial level where they have to be combined with oxygen to make energy. So you're talking about speeding up the cellular death process by taking in sugar.
Hmm.
And so I just don't do it. My wife doesn't do it. Our community of 25,000 people around the world don't do it. They better not anyway. And so we try to just build that in there that it's not normal to do that, but it's normal not to do that. And so for us looking at the concept of longevity like that, it's kind of a no-brainer. You know, you got to have cellular health. Otherwise, if you don't, you won't have organ life.
Mm. Yeah, that's a big mindset shift to look
Yeah.
at things like that through that lens or through that approach, rather than how can I get rid of my cravings because I'm like, I need something sweet right now.
Yeah, and we kind of like look at it in two different ways too, because a lot of people look at the life like this, like you start off and you have a hump, and then you kind of go down like an inverse bell curve. And that last 10 years is like multiple medications, people taking care of you, you can't move, you can't get up. What caused that? What is that caused that? And what if you could live like this? You could be born, you live, and then you change addresses. You know,
Hmm.
what wouldn't that be better? And everybody I talk to would go, well, yeah, I don't want to have that last 10 years of just sickness. And I explained to them that that's called sick span. That's not lifespan, that's sick span.
Hmm.
And I want to encourage them to have the shortest sick span possible and the greatest health span possible in the middle of this thing called lifespan. And so when I started thinking that way, and my wife and I are getting up there in the years as well, we thought, we really have to become experts at this because not only are we aging, but we have our patient and client base aging with us. So let's be a good leader in that.
Wow. Yeah, lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow. And so, what is it for you personally about getting older? I mean, we're all aging, obviously, but I mean, for you personally, what is it that you find is like your motivation to age gracefully?
I was asked a question a long time ago, and the question was this: do you have to get sick to die? And I thought about it a lot. And I came up with a solution. The answer is no, I don't think you have to get sick to die because death really is not a sickness, is it? It's the end of life. So I thought, if I don't have to get sick to die, then why don't I try to live like that too? And so for me, it's an opportunity, I guess, to get the most out of life. I don't want to waste a day. I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste the 1,440 minutes we get during the course of a day. And I want to do a good job. I want to leave like this podcast. I want to leave it better than I found it. I want to do a good job for you, Netta. And I want every encounter to leave the person's feeling better, perhaps a little bit than they were when they came in. And so
Hmm.
that's kind of been my motivation for it. And as long as I'm alive, I want to do that. And I figured to do that, I need to really be taking care of myself.
Yeah, lovely. All right. Yeah. And like, and I know a lot of people have said to me, I don't know if they said this to you, they say, well, listen, I'd rather live a shorter life with sugar than a longer life without it. Because, like, they just imagine just how dull, boring, and sort of gray life would be without sugar. Well, you and I know that's not the case, it's the opposite. But I mean, what do you say to people who are like, yeah, yeah. Long life is fine, but if you're not going to be eating sugar, what's the point?
So when I was a police officer, I learned this lesson from a guy named Daryl. Daryl was a drunk, and I'd arrested him many, many times. One day, Netta, Daryl was jumping in the front of the road, waving his arms at me one morning, and I was driving my patrol car through his neighborhood. And I got out and I said, Daryl, what's your problem? What's going on, man? And he called me by my last name and goes, Sherwood, I want to go to jail. What do you want to go to jail for? And I couldn't figure it out. He wasn't drunk. He didn't have any arrest warrants. So I put Daryl in my car. And I began to ask him, why do you want to go to jail, Daryl? And you know what? He began to cry. And this is a grown man. And he's crying. He goes, you don't understand, do you? He goes, I don't know how to make it out here. I'm more comfortable down there. I know it's the worst place, but down there, I know what time the lights are going to go on, when they're going to go off. I know what clothes I'm going to wear, and I know what food I'm going to eat. Out
Hmm.
here, there's too many unknowns.
Mm.
I know it's better for me, but I'm too scared to live out here. And it hit me. That's why people don't change.
Mm.
They're too scared to change. They believe in their own mind and heart that it's going to be a worse off life. And all I can say to them is just give it 6 months. And if you want to go back to that, great. But it's the difference between living free and living in bondage. And if you don't know you're in bondage until you've lived free for a little window of time and have that comparison. So that's the story I use with them a lot, and many of them get it, I hope.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a fantastic analogy. I love that.
Hmm.
And I often say that I'm sugar free with the emphasis on the free.
Yeah, amen.
People,
I like that.
yeah, everyone like gets, up in arms about the fact that we don't eat sugar. Not the point. The point is
No.
how we feel.
Yeah, and sugar, people need to know too, they've done this experiment many times and they put two sets of mice in a cage and they give them both two different places to eat out of, and they're giving mice food, whatever a mouse eats, and they eventually they put cocaine in one bowl and sugar in another. They kind of, sort of spiced up their meals, let's call it, right? It took only a few minutes for every single mouse to gravitate towards the sugar, leaving the cocaine bowl. Why? Because sugar drives dopamine, which is that neuro reward chemical, much faster and more robust than cocaine. And so that's how addicting it is. So it really is a drug. And that's why, you go to restaurants sometimes and they feed you free stuff that you can snack on. And
Yeah,
it's awful, and this is why kids suffer and this is why we're suffering, I believe, as a world, really, right now.
amazing. Yeah, it's true. And you say you have a community of 25,000 people. Are they all your patients?
Yeah, we've dealt with that many people in the last several years, and we try to, keep tabs on most of them. And most of them have been with us for a long time. And we just, they're all over the place, but it's the same philosophy. We just try to keep in their eyes, in their presence, something to make them think of the things that we're talking about. And generally, if they've been in a world of freedom or sugar free, they
Mhm.
know what that's like. And they remind, now, do they all adhere to that 100% of the time? No.
No,
But, life's not full of perfection. It's not full of a bunch of easy roads, man. You're going to fall down sometimes. Sometimes your own fault, sometimes not your own fault.
yeah,
But I just tell people to don't lay there and cry about it. Get back up and keep going. Don't live in that shame game either. And so
yeah,
we just kind of get them to keep moving forward in that.
lovely. Yeah, and that I find in itself is aging gracefully.
Yes,
You know,
100%.
giving yourself a break a little bit more than when we were younger and we expected perfection.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can strive for excellence every day, and you may touch perfection along the way. It's kind of the way I've said that. And you're not going to rest there in perfection because that's not really possible. I think it's possible to rest in excellence, though. I really do, whatever that means.
Whatever that means for you,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Mhm.
great. Wow. That feels like it's such a lot of pressure off of your patient's shoulders, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't put pressure on them. We just love them where they are, because people don't need condemnation today. There's enough of that. I don't think they need judgment. They need forgiveness. They need somebody to just take them by the hand and say, let me show you, or
Mm.
let me go this way. And that's why in my own life, my wife and Dr. Michelle, we really believe that we should live by that example at all times. And we help each other. But we live by that example because I want them to have somebody they can go to. And so that's kind of the way we view that.
Yeah, lovely. Wow. And so if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Just go to our main website. It's sherwood.tv. And there's a lot of stuff there. There's free blogs and free teachings, free videos and things like that. And all the stuff that we do is there just to be a blessing for them.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mark, so much for talking with me today.
Oh my goodness, I appreciate that. I was looking forward to this, so I appreciate you so much having me, Netta.
What an inspiring conversation with Mark. And I totally agree with him that aging gracefully and joyfully has a lot to do with your own personal choices. And even though now it might not feel like a choice, when you're struggling with cravings, there actually is a way to get your personal power back and choose to reduce or even cut out sugar so that you are able to age gracefully. How can you do that? Well, that's exactly why I created the Freedom from Cravings Formula program. In the program, you'll get step-by-step guidance and customized support through the 5-step formula that I've developed to help you get control over cravings so that you can finally live your life with more energy and fit into your favorite clothes effortlessly and feel confident in your food choices so that you can ditch the shame and embarrassment that you feel every time your emotions make you slip or fall off the wagon, and so that you never feel like you're on some kind of a restrictive diet. If you're at the stage of your life where you're finally ready to look after yourself, let's chat. You can hop on a free clarity call with me at any time by going to aftersugarclub.com and clicking on Program at the top. You'll also find the link with the show notes together with this episode. So go to aftersugarclub.com. Speak soon. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.